we've deliberately connected it through to the customer. So there's not a decision that gets made in various parts of our organization that isn't directly connected to insights we're getting from the customer.
Welcome to Around the Farm, the podcast about all things ag. I'm your host, Tom Versman. And hey, if this is your first time watching, ring the bell, subscribe anywhere you get podcasts. Andy, how you doing?
I'm good, Tom. We've been having a lot of really good conversations lately, haven't we?
We have. We've had some great guests on, and we've got two more awesome guests today.
Yeah, and what better way to kick off 2026?
That's right.
Because we're in a new year. We're talking about all the things Bayer's bringing out with innovation, things coming out of the pipeline. What better guest to have than the two that we have with us today?
Why don't we do some intros? Tom, go ahead and kick us off. It's going to be a little confusing today because we have two Toms, but looking forward to it.
I think we'll manage to figure out who we're talking to.
Right? That's right.
If not, you can wing it. No, it's great to be here. Thanks for having us. I'm Tom Eickhoff. I lead the science organization for our digital farming solutions. So many of the digital recommendations that we're surfacing both in FieldView and around Bayer are part of what my team does. Been a part of agriculture my whole life. Still have two brothers that run our family farm. So yeah, excited to talk about what's new this year.
Where is the family farm?
It's in northeast Nebraska.
Northeast Nebraska.
Okay.
So
yeah.
We had Renault a while ago. He was an Iowa
guy.
Now we got some Nebraska.
Little competition there.
That's right. That's why you have that.
All
Huskers.
irrigated?
All dry land.
All dry land.
So very much in the northeast corner. We're 15 miles south of the South Dakota border, 50 miles west of the Iowa border. So not on top of the aquifer.
Gotcha. Okay. A little bit different.
A little bit different, yes.
Yeah. Mike, how about yourself?
Yeah, well, it's great to be here today. Mike Graham, I lead the R&D organization at Bayer, 30 years actually in Bayer, and have had the pleasure of looking at the evolution of technology and how it enables us to create the next generation of products and solutions for our customers. Third generation plant scientist. So
that's cool.
My grandfather was in horticulture. My father was in soil microbiology, so spent a lot of time as a kid digging up roots, and now trained as a plant breeder, but leading the R&D organization. So great to be here today.
So you have a deep history of soil science. So you would never call it dirt, correct?
Never call it dirt, and you would never do that in front of my dad for sure.
I learned that at Mizzou. I had a soil sciences class with Dr. Randy Miles, and he said dirt is under your fingernails.
Oh,
soil is what grows your food.
Fair enough. Stewards of the land.
That's right.
Mike, do you have siblings?
I do. Yeah, I have two siblings. Both of them are actually in agriculture as well.
Awesome. Nice. Good. So an ag family, just like you.
Yeah, you're the odd man out, Tom.
That's right. Tom, did you have family in ag too? Outside of like just growing up on the farm, are they still in the business or doing something different?
Yeah, we could do a whole show on this.
Oh boy.
Actually, Tom. No, I have 10 siblings.
Oh.
So five brothers, 5 sisters. My 5 sisters are the 5 oldest in the family.
Okay.
And then 6 boys, so 5 in a row, then 6 in a row. 2 of my brothers still operate the family farm. And there's, like I said, there's a whole podcast episode just talking about what it's like growing up.
We should compare that to daycare costs today and we can really dive in.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting one because, you think about how a farming operation operates. And, in today's day and age, labor is typically one of the challenges farmers face. Right. Not a challenge my dad faced.
I was going to say, no, not at all. Not at all. Where do you fall? Obviously, your sisters, it sounds like, are all older, but where do you fall in the line of your brothers?
I am number 10 out of the 11.
Okay. So not the baby, but
yeah. My brother likes to say that, my parents figured it out and stopped with him. I like to say my parents got greedy and tried for one more and realized
and then they learned.
They went one too far.
They went one too far.
We'll be sure to send this clip to him.
That's right. Well, we can use it for social clips.
Don't worry, I'll send it to him.
Okay. So, obviously, now we're in January, just coming out of the Christmas holiday. I'm sure you had a very busy Christmas holiday. I don't know how many Christmases or the size of a place you have to for 11 siblings. But when we look back at 2025, we just had Rodrigo kind of wrapping up 25 and talking about, from a commercial standpoint, what we learned, what we saw. I'd be really curious to take from you guys when we think about science, R&D, things in the pipeline. What were some of the things that we executed on really well in 25, we brought out maybe, or things that we learned in 2025 that then we're going to build on in 2026?
I was reflecting, as we closed out 25 on just the progress the teams have made, and it's kind of unbelievable, to be honest, when you start to think about the change that we made as an organization to empower teams and just bring cross-functional teams together, but to actually see that in action and what it's delivered. I'll maybe approach it from the FieldView and digital side. I mean, the progress that's been made on our key launches like Precion. There's been tremendous effort in Latin America on a program called Valora that kind of the first time we've been able to fully integrate some of these programs into FieldView where a farmer gets a full experience, a full seasonal experience with both our physical product and digital product all rolled up into one. There's some really exciting things happening about how farmers are going to be able to collaborate with their advisors coming forward that we're just starting to pilot, and you're starting to see that actually take hold in the field. And then, being a bit of the science geek, you got to look at what happened in the science behind it. And I think what's always rewarding is the team has actually been working on some of these capabilities for 4 or 5 years. And as we transition from 25 to 26, most of these things are going to be in the marketplace. So, all that work starts to come to real farms all around the world.
Yeah, it's neat seeing the picture come together, right? Yeah. And I think you touched on, we've talked about the 10 blockbusters, and you touched on just 2 there. So there's even 8 more, as we were joking earlier, but it's pretty exciting where we're going. And it's, at least for me, being on the FieldView business for as long as I have, just finally seeing how I feel digital fits into our broader marketplace. And that's been a lot of fun.
I think back to when we had Jeremy on the podcast, Jeremy Williams, and he talked about we're moving away from thinking about digital as a vertical that stands on its own to being a horizontal that integrates into all these different, pieces of the overall Bayer system. So, Mike, I guess kind of similar question as we think about, obviously, the digital capabilities we're building and we built in 25 and 26. What are some of the things that you saw in 25?
Yeah, it's actually was an amazing year. So, if you just reflect back on kind of what we were building from a product perspective, whether it's next generation of seed, next generation of biotech traits, next generation of CP, some of them are blockbusters, others are not. But if you just think about that collective group of innovations, there's very few you can find that didn't work as we planned. And so I've been in this business for a long time. I don't think I have ever ended a year without this level of excitement as I think about how all these capabilities are coming together, the technology is going to fuel the future. Now, if you go deeper in the pipeline, this is where things are also happening that are very unique and very different. And this is the first time where you start seeing the emergence of data with accelerated understanding of a genome, with an accelerated understanding of data we're getting from the field. And it's all coming together to enhance the way we design the next generation of product. Now, what's really cool about that is not just the ability to do it, is we've deliberately connected it through to the customer. So there's not a decision that gets made in various parts of our organization that isn't directly connected to insights we're getting from the customer. And we do that in different ways. We do that through, obviously, connections. We do that through data. But we're also connected through some of the work that Tom's team is doing of understanding this breadth of data we have in FieldView, how it informs what we're doing and what is important to our customers. That's enabling us to develop the next generation of solutions. And we're seeing that now come through the pipeline, and it's unbelievable.
You think about that from a customer perspective, and I think one of the challenges farmers always bring up is, hey, we're bringing new genetics out super fast. And the first thing they want to do is like, well, tell me how to manage this. What does it mean? How does it relate to something I had on my farm before? As I think about the digital element combined with the knowledge that Mike just described, that end-to-end data, when we're bringing products out to market, we often have years worth of data that is actually already influencing when we make a recommendation through digital. All that information is there. So, I mean, the confidence, I think, at which farmers can feel when they take these new recommendations, these new products on farm is probably unlike they've ever been able to before.
So from like where we're going, would you both say this might be one of the first times, or maybe it's an evolution of everything is just starting to get integrated together? That customer experience almost is becoming of that farmer experience with not just, a specific seed product, a specific CP product in FieldView, right? It is a unified experience where everything's touching with the center or the customer at the center of it. Is that kind of the thought process there? Is that where your minds go?
I mean, I think integrated is a really good way to describe how we're trying to bring new technology and innovation to farmers. But I also want to make sure that people think about it as integrated doesn't mean it's the same for everyone.
Got it.
And I think that integrated, along with the combination of tailoring to your specific needs as a farmer or as a customer, is the power of having all of this connected in the background. Because when you start to define, hey, here's the outcome I'm trying to achieve, you can then use the data to generate the right recommendation, find the right product, and then feed that back into the R&D loop that drives the next cycle of innovation.
There's a really cool story that happened at the last Olympics. There was a young lady called Katie Douglas, and Katie Douglas was a breaststroker, and she was good, she wasn't great. And she also happened to be a data scientist. And so what Katie Douglas actually did is she put a lot of sensors on her, collected a lot of data, swam a lot in the pool, and used all that data to understand how she could actually swim better.
That's awesome.
And change the way she was doing things so that she could ultimately win, and she ended up winning the gold medal in this race. And that's a little bit about what we're doing now. So we're putting sensors on everything. We're understanding the genetics, what's happening in the field, we're getting all this data, and we're bringing it all together so we not only understand what happened on that field at that point in time, but what could happen on that field in the future. And this is a journey that we're on, which is when you start putting it all together, it becomes really powerful because the grower values from all of that knowledge.
And then that ultimately takes your farm to the next level.
Yeah, well, I think back to what Alex was talking about when he and Jamie joined. And that was from a breeding perspective, obviously, but we, breeding backgrounds. He talked about how we've moved to now, there what, was it 7 septillion?
Septillion. I just remember septillion.
I remember 7 septillion opportunities whenever we're, breeding plants or, corn products that we have to comb through. And yes, having customer data that they own can help speed some of that up, but also all the data that Bayer has, being the R&D leader in the industry, our speed at which we can go through all of that and bring out new products that have a, really tangible fit for a farmer's operation is, so much faster than our competitors.
What did he say about, because we asked about where he sees yield going. Remember that? How many bushel did he think he would see in his lifetime at least?
I got to hear this.
it was. I don't want to call out any direct claims that
no,
Alex
it's
made.
not a
But I remember back when I was taking some plant science classes at Mizzou, Dr. Gowdy at the time, she was talking about what is the theoretical yield potential of a bag of corn.
That's right.
Whether it's at the time, maybe 600 bushel, which has now been smashed, 800 bushel. What is the theoretical yield potential? It's really, to me, the sky's the limit. It's all these different things that happen throughout the season that are going to be robbing yield.
That's right.
And that's really where it comes back to us as Bayer. That's our job for the farmer customers. How do we mitigate as many of those for the farmer as possible?
I need to look back and see the exact number, but I want to say he said somewhere between 50 and 100 bushel increase potentially. Again, not a claim, just to be clear.
Yes.
But I think Tom and Mike, just like we're diving in, I think these are all opportunities to reclaim additional bushel on farm.
And I think that brings up another question that I had in my mind, because I thought from my time when I was with Channel in Missouri, we had some hybrids that you would have in your portfolio for 5 or 6 years. 21636, great product. It was around forever. 21707. Kyle Allen would still love to have supply of 21707.
I think that's our game. Drink every time you say Kyle Allen.
Yeah. Channel Seed Pro Extraordinaire in Hawk Point, Missouri. But now we have really fast turnover of hybrids and products because we're bringing out stuff extremely fast. So in your all's experience over the past, even 30 years in the industry, how have you seen our speed of innovation change, and where do you see it going over the next 3 to 5 years?
It's obviously changed dramatically, right? And it's just fueled by capabilities that, like when I started my career, we never had. So when I was a breeder, everything was virtually done through my eyes. You'd go out to the field, you would look at it, you'd say, is it good or bad? And good or bad could depend if you had a disease, if you had a windstorm, you were dependent on nature to say something was bad. And that's a really hard world to make lots of advancements in. If you fast forward where we are today, every seed that we plant, we understand at a high level of fidelity what the sequence is of that entity. And because we have all this data, we can combine the two to predict how that seed is going to perform. And the reality today is you don't even actually need somebody like what I used to do. looking at something from the beginning. You just have so much data, you can turn it around much quicker. And the beauty is, it used to take me 5 years to run a breeding generation. In our current system, it takes 4 months.
Wow.
Which simply means that you are delivering and developing product performance at a speed that was never possible in the past. And this is happening across the board. So that's a breeding example. If you think about CP, our science of how we develop the next generation of CP product is so different because we can do everything in silico. We can design not just the target, but we can design the molecule. And that allows us to be much more prescriptive of what does it need to be, how's it going to perform. And we can get through the junk much quicker and put the real stuff into the field to evaluate. And that is a change that has happened in the last 5 years, but it's kind of like what we're so excited of 25, because now you start seeing some of that come to fruition. And there's lots to be excited about.
What's the one thing, if you could go back, write a letter to yourself at 25 years old, what's the one thing you've seen that you're just like, man, I did not see that coming and that was a game changer?
You can ask yourself, what are the things that you didn't see coming? And there's always many, right?
Sure.
I mean, if I would have thought back in '93 there was going to be the internet or a cell phone or a UAV, you just wouldn't have seen those kind of things coming. But you can also ask yourself the question, was I bold enough in making a decision of how to do something bigger?
I like that.
And what you always find when you look back is you were never bold enough.
Yeah.
And we do bold things at Bayer. But if you go back and you do a review of saying, here's what we said 5 years ago we wanted to do, when you put that in place, you always believe, wow, that looks bold and big. When you actually get 5 years down the road, you think, oh, we did that. We should have done more. And so this is kind of the journey that we're on, which is like, how do we continue to think bigger and bolder of what we can do? Because we've got tools and capabilities we never had before.
It's awesome. I'm still a little bitter in high school when I was told I needed to learn all those math formulas because I'd never have a computer in my pocket that could do it for me.
You're not going to have a calculator with you.
Not going to have a calculator with me all the time,
No,
right?
I sure do.
That's right.
No,
That's
you just speak it into your watch and it happens.
Yeah, that's right. Just ask AI and it can write it all out for you.
Yeah. It still strikes me, though, when you talked about, what you could do in 5 years as a breeder, we can now do in 4 months. And it's not to say we're going to replace, how we breed. It's just now what I can do in 4 months. If you give me 5 years, imagine what I can do. And I remember Alex talked about breeding is a science, yes, but it's also an art. And man, the speed we're going to be able to bring out new things. While yes, some of those hybrids that you're working with today, you might not have access to them in 2 to 5 years, but think about what you're going to have. On the same lines of that, so a lot of people that either listen or watch probably haven't had the opportunity to tour some of our facilities, like our Chesterfield location or our climate research farms that we have throughout the countryside. Can you both talk a little bit about what we're doing in some of these locations where we test things and we learn to help advance the pipeline or our R&D roadmap?
It's in some ways, I think people would walk out there and say, wow, this looks like a farm of the future.
Yep, 100%.
And it comes back to what Mike said, the amount of things you can measure and sense today, whether it be through drone flights and capturing, high-powered imagery or tracking the path and the journey of that seed at a precise level that we've never been able to do before, is now just kind of not easy, but it's just what you do.
Yeah.
And it becomes more and more about how do you take that information and drive it into action that you can now take in decision making in the pipeline. And I would often say that many times I think the capabilities you see on our research farms today, you can quickly arrive that, hey, we don't really have a data generation problem. What we have is a problem of how do you take this and generate it into insights and action faster.
That's right.
Yep.
Because it's incredible what you can collect, what you can measure, and how you can track performance. Tie that to environment and soils and everything else. It's really an amazing thing to see.
I think too, from what I've seen at least with Josh Dukeman and Adam Bailey, shout out to those guys. It's been incredible. Every time I set foot on that farm, I learned something different. They're doing trials at full scale in some instances, but I think the other cool thing too is how digital tools have evolved trials. Now every field is virtually a test plot, and you can really deep dive into that data and have that data tell you the story. And when you go out to that research farm, it's incredible. Everything's retrofitted with the latest and greatest, and they're doing some very, very advanced stuff that's helping generate into our Bayer pipeline.
Well, the real beauty of it is that, like at the Illinois Research Farm in New Berlin, Josh and Adam, they're farmers too.
They're farmers too.
Yeah,
that's right.
They know what the customer's looking for, and they can respond to things in real time. Like he did a ton of trials, I know, with fungicides as well as Preceon, and he's obviously learning from a Bayer employee perspective, but also, I mean, they were both retailers and farmers in the past, so they know, that lens as well.
That's right. Shout out to Trial Tracker. If you haven't caught one of our YouTube shorts, give them a plug there.
Oh, yeah. Nice little segue.
That's right.
But so similar question back over to like our facilities here in Chesterfield. I know that we've done a lot of work on those facilities over the last couple of years, revamping them, adding additional greenhouses. Can you kind of talk about what some of the process is there, about how we can, simulate different, environments to, speed up innovation?
I mean, there's always two parts to a building. There's the part of the work that happens, and you can almost allow yourself to walk down any corridor in that building, and you'll find state-of-the-art science on many different capabilities, whether it's how do we sequence, how do we do transformation. Genome editing is becoming a capability that's super important. How do we think about automation and engineering capabilities that we need to build in the future? So facilities we have are super cool, but it's kind of who works in those facilities that I think sets us apart
100%.
and makes us really unique. The other thing I'll mention is, and you can virtually go around the world, is the level of automation that has been built and put in place is non-existent in other parts of the industry. So whether it's how you run a big facility like Marana, where plants simply move through the greenhouse with nobody touching them and get to a person that pollinates it, but that's the only time you touch it, to the work that we do in Lyon, France, where we're focused on developing the next generation of CP product that benefits every part of the world. And it's highly, highly automated, which allows us to look at more compounds, look at more plants, look at different diseases. So this level of automation is everywhere. And it gets to Tom's point, which is all of it drives more data, more information, enables us to do things much quicker than what we could in the past. And so we ultimately end up having an engine that can deliver more than most of our competitors.
What's so cool to see in this space is that piece of automation and data connectivity is not unique site by site. It's unique to having a global R&D organization and one that's focused not only on seed, not only on biotech, not only on CP, but one integrated team that now the power of that data goes well beyond just the project you're working on, but goes on to inform the entire pipeline. And that truly is a unique thing, that this connectivity that now happens between our global network of R&D facilities is pretty amazing.
And I, to Tom's point, I mean, this technology stack that we've built and connected, I'm always amazed. I could get up if I wanted and look at a planter planting a plot in Brazil and a combine harvesting a plot in South Africa. And knowing that within minutes, that data is available for a scientist to use to make a different decision, you can't get to a better spot than that.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
I would like to shout out the Marana location. I got to go down there at the Preceon End of Year event last year. And aside from just being a very, genuinely beautiful building to see, I mean, it's an amazing feat.
It is amazing
to be able to look at it. The farmers that we took down there were probably 300 or so farmers that went down there, and they got to do a tour of the Marana facility as a part of this. All of their feedback was like, oh, now I get why Bayer's the R&D leader. Because how much is under glass in Marana?
We're a little over 6 acres under glass. Yeah, I mean, it's massive.
Pretty big.
Pretty good size.
Pretty good size. So, Mike, you mentioned genome editing in your last response. Can we talk a little bit about that? I think that's a hot topic for a lot of people who are listening. Kind of what is Bayer focusing on when we're thinking about genome editing and where we see that taking the company?
It's one of those topics, and kind of goes back to your question. Like 10 years ago, did you think this capability would be around? No. And obviously, if you think about what breeding does and why Bayer has been so successful, is we capitalize on different genes from around the world, and we bring them to our products so that they can provide something that's differentiated in the market that we want to sell. That has worked really effectively, but it takes a lot of time. So I can tell you stories of how a gene in Thailand is a super unique gene for stress tolerance that our teams have used in different parts of the world. And we have many products and hybrids in the marketplace that actually connect to this germplasm. It's just a great story. The challenging part of that story is it took my career for that to happen. And I didn't do the work, obviously, but that's how long it takes, because you've got to adapt the germplasm, you've got to identify the area, you've got to get it into your elite germplasm, you've got to test it, and that takes time. With genome editing, it opens up a different door, which is provided you have the data, provided you understand how genes interact with each other or how they inform each other, you can start actually editing those so you can modulate or shut off different parts of the genome to do different things. And you can do it really, really quick. And so this is like the beauty of the capabilities that we're putting in place today, that we've got all this data, we can edit, we can start modifying things at scale and with speed. And then you can quickly get those into your breeding pipeline and program. So if you simply think today, I think we've done something like 10,000 edits, or maybe it's 100,000 edits. Sorry, but it's a big number.
Either is a big number.
That's a lot.
I think, but we've got incredible capabilities to do the edits. What the team is working through now is like, how do you imagine combining your editing pipeline with a breeding pipeline? So the next generation of products actually combine the best of both worlds. And this is the journey that our teams are on right now. In some form or fashion, Marana will come back to play in this, because it's also a unique environment to enable those kind of technologies to come to fruition at scale. But super, super exciting technology that we have at our disposition.
Yep.
That's awesome.
And so thinking about like a tangible example, we talk about blockbusters. I think our favorite blockbuster at the moment, not saying it's always going to be our favorite blockbuster, but right now, Preceon is the one everybody's excited about. We don't have a gene-edited version of Preceon today in the market, right? It's the conventionally bred.
Yeah, we have a native trait, and then we're working on a biotech version.
And so as we go in the future, then that's where we can start to see the ramp up.
Certainly, that's a very distinct possibility that would exist.
Can we jump to the Bayer R&D investment a little bit? I think that's something we've heard a lot about internally, and I think too, when our farmers ask, what are you doing to keep being the leader in the space? Let's unpack that a little bit. Maybe Tom, I don't know if you want to kick us off, but just how you view where those dollars are going. And I know that's a big, broad statement and a big, broad bucket of money, but how is that going back and at the end of the day, ending up on farm to our customers?
When I think of R&D investment, I think of it as a measure of trust that our customers have put back into the organization to continue to drive innovation. And you really have to look at it in that lens, because we do spend a lot on R&D innovation, which if you're not using that to make agriculture, farmers, consumers better, then you've misused the trust that you've created with your customer base. So I think we talk a lot about, you mentioned earlier in our discussion about putting the customer in the center. And that's the goal with the R&D investment of how do you put the customer in the center around the world, understand what are the very unique challenges that they're facing, and then take some of the brightest minds in the world and say, hey, so go solve this challenge, and outfit them with the right facilities, the right equipment, the right technology to do what they love. And I think that is what has been really cool for me to watch over the time, is see this investment not only just do cool science, but actually impact farmers and actually change the way that people farm. Because whether you look at biotech traits or the next generation of crop protection innovation, those are things that were started many years ago. So this is a continuous cycle that needs to happen, and I think it puts it upon us as leaders, of us as employees, to make sure that we are stewarding those dollars in the right way and focusing them in the right spaces to truly advance what we're trying to do.
Fully agree, and it always does start with a customer. And for us, how it's translated to what people see, what our employees see in the organization, and what we've communicated externally. We've joked a little bit about your guys' favorite blockbuster, but the reality is, if you simply say of like those 10 blockbusters, whether it's Viconic, is that what you said?
Yeah, Viconic,
And both of you are
Preceon.
Preceon. Okay, so obviously, but the other ones are first generation of herbicide that has been around. New herb is Eickhoff, so 30 years since we've had something like that. So a massive success. We just started selling Planexus a couple of weeks ago, so a massive success. That was in South America. We've got, obviously, Viconic. We've got Preceon. We've got corn rootworm 4.
That's right.
If
Next generation fungicides?
Next generation fungicide. If you HT, so, and then obviously in Brazil we've got HT4 as well. We've got SIP3. We've got HT5 coming. But if you just go through the list, all of them have the opportunity to create great value for a customer. All of those are in the midst of either being at the final stage of development and deployment, all the way to what we're going to do in 2030. So they're in the back end of the pipeline. But go find another company that has that.
Right.
Go look at anything they're saying to say, okay, here's all our pipeline in the next 5 years. You won't find it. You have some weeks that are really like super science weeks. And this was actually a super science week because we had the opportunity to look at kind of our soybean trait platform for the next 5 years, both through the lens of what we're doing here in North America and then in Brazil. But in the U.S., this will be the first time in this year, so 26, where we will have 3 generations of herbicide-tolerant traits in germplasm. So XtendFlex, last year deployments. Viconic, we've got the largest class of Viconic products ready to get deployed. I just looked at the yield data. On average, they're about 1.9 bushels better than all our competitors, which is amazing.
Love that.
And then this will be the first year where we have the first launch class of HT5, which brings PPO. Most companies do 1 trait in a year, in a decade, sorry.
Yeah.
And so, this is like what makes us so unique, and this is what's coming to our customers around the world.
Yeah, we were talking right before, like we were in the other room, and I was talking to Jerry Sinchins, who's one of our farmer friends. That's a big advocate up in Iowa, and I asked him if he had any questions for the R&D team.
He's always good for a question.
Jerry's always got a question. His one question was around, Bayer always prides itself in being the R&D leader and, spending the most on R&D. How do you tie that back to ROI at the farm gate? And I mean, to me, it's super clear when you think about what we're bringing out. Those things are things that farmers have not only been asking for, but have been needing for years.
Right.
And now we're right on the doorstep of having them.
Not everything has even been released yet, but what do we do after that? What's the next 10? And I mean, are those things we're exploring now? Or are we still trying to focus on...
Or even taking a step back, like we have these 10 blockbusters. When did we start working on them?
That's a good point. Yeah, maybe we work our way backwards up to this point.
Yeah, like, for Preceon, Viconic, things like that. How long have they been?
Well, the native trait is 15, 20 years we started on it. So it's a fascinating story because it actually started in Mexico. So we had a team there that was tightly connected to our customers. They had been experiencing more wind events. And were giving us feedback to
windy
say...
Windy day
today. Yes. And we're giving them feedback like, you guys have great yield, but your hybrids are getting too tall. And this is what happens when we get these wind events. And so they started to look for alternatives. And it took literally, today, like 15 years of development to get a native trait into elite germplasm. And today our performance in our short corn hybrids in Mexico is better than actually in our tall. And we have like 70% market share in Mexico. So these are really, really good and incredible genetics. So many of these innovations start 15 to 20 years ago. And we are obviously already working on the next generation of blockbusters that are going to hit the pipeline. I think what's going to get more and more unique in the journey of these is our fidelity around understanding how we do it. Enables us to accelerate development in a way that's very different than what was done in the past. Because we just didn't have the depth of knowledge of like, where should a gene be placed? How do you connect it to maybe what's happening in CP? So if you sit today and think about next generation of herbicide tolerance, our hope is it connects to one of the blockbusters, which is Eickhoff. And so for the first time, you're starting to see early on that we're not just developing a specific target for CP and biotech. We're actually thinking forward about how do we develop both at the same time so we can provide a grower combination of both, which is an incredible asset to have. Yeah.
There's always some incredible thought leaders in the company that are pushing the envelope of what's next. I mean, just recently, I know the R&D team, along with a broad group of stakeholders, hosted a day and a half session on what will climate change do in the next 10 to 20 years.
Yep.
I mean, what are the things that aren't here today that if scenario A happens, these could be new diseases that might be a problem, or if scenario B happens, what is that going to mean for us? So the amount of thought that goes into what might agriculture look like 10 to 20 years from now is driving all of the new wave of innovation that, hopefully if you invite us back in 10 years, Tom will be able to tell you about.
I think we might shoot with the amount of innovation you have. It sounds like even in 6 months, we might need to do something, a mid-year update.
Yeah.
But Tom's point is like super important because, and that's why you need speed and agility, because things are changing so quick. Obviously, you go back to 2014, you never saw tar spot in the U.S. And now it's a major problem.
Yep.
And you need the speed and ability to do something about it so you can bring a solution to your customers. We have corn stunt that you've never had in the past in the U.S., and now you've got places where it's showing up. And so we need to be much more thoughtful about the changes that are happening in the future, and then how do we bring them all the way back so we can do very, very different things than what we've done in the past.
I was just recently in a discussion with the breeding team, and they were talking about over the last 8 years how much the relative maturity farmers are planting has shifted, to the north. Not a surprise to anybody in farming, but they see it.
Yeah.
But think about that from a breeding lens of if I'm not testing these RMs years in advance in these environments, you're never prepared.
Right.
So, it's incredible to see.
Or the flip, and this is the beauty of some of the data we get from Tom, is just the flip in the order of planting soybeans versus corn. And then needing to think differently about, okay, well, how do I breed for this change that is obviously going to continue to advance? And so that's where this partnership has been so strong.
Some of these changes in environment and practices brings up a thought in my mind. And so, you both came from ag backgrounds.
Yep.
So if you all were managing your family farms today.
Oh, this is dangerous.
What are some things that are either, relatively new or emerging trends? What are some things that you all would be testing or, encouraging your family farm to be putting into practice?
Not correcting your siblings.
No, definitely. No, of course not. No.
Or you can.
Yeah.
We won't send this part to them.
Yeah.
But so what are some new things that, you'd be testing or that you would encourage people to trial?
What I've seen on our family farm over the last years is an incredible increase in production. And it gets back to your asked me earlier, Tom, is it all irrigated? No, it's not irrigated. And actually, one of the biggest challenges the farm faced in that part of the world is the amount of water we get.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not an optimal corn growing region when you look at just pure moisture. And you start to look at the production increases my brothers have achieved, and you ask the question, well, what have they done? Well, if you go back 20 years, they minimized tillage almost completely. I mean, so Roundup Ready allowed them to move to a very different weed control system. The advances in biotechnology and breeding technology and equipment has allowed a much, much more stress-tolerant plant ability to protect against these other yield-robbing things. And I actually did this exercise. I went to, with my brother, and I went back and looked at soil samples from some of our fields over the last 20 years. What that has unlocked is an increase in soil organic matter of almost a percent. And you think about that, like, well, what does that really mean? Well, for our farm, that means about a 14 to 15% increase in water holding capacity.
Wow.
So if you're a farmer and you're limited by water and you can make these practice changes, now all of a sudden you have better genetics, you have biotechnology, you have a better weed control system, and I'm increasing the environment that, the productivity of the environment they can grow in. It's incredible. And you start to stack these things together. So, I mean, what do you change? You got to keep pushing the envelope. I mean, there are so many new technologies coming. We wear the FieldView brand, but I mean, there's so much data now that farmers can have at their own fingertips, evaluating their own performance, looking at how am I doing, tracking this over time. If we're not leaning into those things going forward, then you get stuck in this team of teams, this model that all of a sudden can't adjust when everyone else around you has. So I think it's just really incredible to take a step back and look maybe where have people been the last 10, 20 years and say, hey, what has driven that change? And how do I do that faster? Because I think that's the cycle we run in R&D is how do you do what's working and go faster?
What was the average yield on the farm as a kid versus what your brothers are getting today?
Yeah, that's a good. And this year was a record year up there. I mean, they had the ideal season.
Yep.
You know, my mom's 86 years old. She goes, Tom, I've never in my life seen a year like this because we've got gravel spots. Usually by the 4th of July, they're crisp. You couldn't find them this year. So, I mean, this year is maybe an anomaly, but I tell this story a lot. When I was growing up, Dad had a 5,000 bushel grain storage bin. That was a drying bin. And we raised cattle. And in the amount of corn acres that we farmed, we never filled that bin. And you could tell the stress on Dad as the corn did not fill, like, now I'm going to have to buy corn to feed the cattle. Like, oh, sure, this changes my bottom line.
Yeah,
my brothers now have over 80,000 bushels of storage, and they were putting stuff on the ground this year. And awesome. The amount of acres they have increased has not increased with the pace of what their storage has. And again, it's a relatively small operation, just the two of them that run it, but still run a lot of cattle. But when you start to look at it, you can do the math pretty quickly, and they've probably increased their corn acres 4 to 5x, and the productivity and the amount of bushels they produce close to 10x from what it used to be.
Innovation's obviously a piece of that, but then willingness to adopt and then farm practices.
We talk all the time about farming being a system, and it typically is not just one thing. It's how do you stack these technologies together and change the way you're farming to really have the impact you want.
So one of the things Andy and I really liked is we like to learn new things. I mean, we do not know everything by any means.
I would argue we don't.
No, at MIZ, baby.
Yeah,
but so a lot of opportunity. But how is R&D designing new products? Maybe walk us through that and even educate us a little bit on the process.
You think of a mad scientist with a beaker and pouring things together and making new products. I'm sure that's not how it happens. So
that's what Tom looks like when we leave.
When we were looking for them, they both had their white coats on. You don't need those science coats here.
Yeah, but seriously, how do we get to these new innovations?
Well, and it's a great question, and one that we actually have spent the last 5 years thinking about and building. But it's always helpful to think and put it in context for how we used to do things. And maybe the easiest way to think about it is essentially we just simply selected the best. And selecting the best is very simple, right? Which is you grow a bunch of stuff, you apply whatever technology you have at the time, and you decide which is the best and you move it to the next year.
Yeah.
That type of model, obviously very effective and has enabled us to deliver the products and solutions to our customers. But you can only grow so much. Yeah. And it means, and what Bayer's done is we got really, really good at selecting the best, and we ran the biggest pipeline in the industry. So whether it's a seed pipeline, a biotech pipeline, or a CP pipeline, we had huge pipelines. And every year we would go through this process. What's the best looking material? We would advance to the next year. And then we would do the same. And ultimately we would have enough data to say that we can deliver and deploy a product to the marketplace. Now, the shift to design the best has two big components to it. One is that you believe you have enough data of all the components that enable you to deliver and develop a product. So the genetics, in the case of seed, the knowledge of a biotech trait and where to insert it, the chemical understanding. And then the application of artificial intelligence to say, how do I use artificial intelligence? How do I use advanced analytic capabilities to use all that data to design what the future product needs to look like? Now, whenever you talk about design, it implies something that we don't actually talk about a lot, which is simply design has to be connected to a customer. And you can't just say you're going to go around and design something without an incredible knowledge of what the customer needs now and in the future. So part of this journey has been how do we collect insight from customers, knowledge from customers, and to quantify what brings value on their farm so that as we're designing that next generation of product, we're laser focused on what's going to bring value to their operations. So today, and this is you're alluding to Marana. What most farmers don't know is that every plant you saw in Marana actually was connected to insight that we got from many different farmers with different perspectives and value. But everything in that facility has its origin in what brings value to a farmer. And because of that, then we can design, and that's exactly what happens in that facility. In fact, you call it Marana, we call it a design facility.
It's pretty cool.
Because that is exactly what all those plants are going through. So whether you're in seed today, whether you're in biotech today, whether you're in CP today, crop protection, all of our teams are doing exactly that. They're designing that next generation product with advanced capabilities, advanced analytics, with artificial intelligence to really build a future product that in the past we would never be able to do because we simply didn't have the capabilities in place.
Yeah, it's amazing. And now in my mind, I see like all the plants in Marana, and each of them has just a little tag, which is just a request from farmer that comes through the data that they opt in to share. That's amazing.
I think what's really cool is, we talk quite a lot about how, we have this genetic potential in seed and we're always trying to protect it. And, back to Mike's point, you think back even just 10 years ago and, hey, we've all dealt with resistance and we find out like, hey, that site within the insect gut or in the plant that, overcame the crop protection product or the BT product, that's now failed. How did we get there? Well, it was exactly what Mike said. We just screened. We found it. And then we figured out what it did and said, yeah, this is a good way to control this. Versus now going in and understanding what are the targets and how would you design a product, a crop protection product that's going to go take that site and control this pest. And it is a completely different way of thinking about bringing innovation to market.
That's amazing.
That's unreal.
And it just shows to me how much we don't know about.
That's right.
Because we're on the commercial side and the marketing side, but how much we don't know about all these things that we're working on get created. And so, as we kind of get closer to the end of our conversation, I'm interested. I think you're interested too. You're taking a ton of notes. You always love to learn.
Always love to learn.
And I think you all are, lifelong learners and also educators. If you were to, talk to the people who listen, a lot of farmers, a lot of advisors, even some internal people, with your all's background in research and development and data, what insights would you give to customers or listeners about how to continue to learn or how to, take things away from conversations?
I love this type of setting and discussion we're having here. So clearly taking the opportunity, whether it's to listen to this kind of thing or to read or to just learn and see what's out there is hugely important. And I have a different talk today, and I'm going to talk about this very topic of the importance of learning, the importance of leaving enough time to kind of let your mind see what's happening in other places, whether it's through working with growers, whether it's working through scientists, whether it's working with data science, whomever you want to learn from, but this opportunity and making sure you take the time to do it and building the collaboration so that it's not just the learning, but it's an opportunity to continue to advance. I've always loved, I think you mentioned you were there last year at Marana. I was there the year before. I left, I'm sure, with more learning than any of the farmers did because their insights and knowledge of how they planned on using Preceon and what they did to fully understand how to use it, it was incredible. So I think we've got to be, you got to take the time. You've got to have good sources of where you want to go and get your learnings. But also we got to be willing to share. What I've always liked about Tom and kind of my approach to this has always been super willing to share. There's we work in a really interesting space. We believe in the mission of Bayer, which is an incredible mission. Tom mentioned how important it is. If you want to see scary numbers, think about what the world's going to look like in 2050. There is urgency. There is urgency for us to accelerate science. There is urgency for us to understand products in a different way. But we have big, big challenges coming our way unless we start doing something about it now. And that starts with our innovation and getting out on the farm.
We've got a whole year ahead of us. If you had a couple things to share on what to expect in 2026, Tom, what would it be? Maybe from a FieldView perspective or just even a holistic Bayer perspective.
Yeah, hold on. I think many of us have seen, the ag market and the industry it's been a tough couple of years, these last couple of years. boy, if you take a look at the things that are happening in R&D and what Mike discussed, hold on. There's exciting big things happening, and they're going to happen at a pace that I don't think we've ever seen before in the industry. And I think 2026 is going to be a launching point for many of these things, whether it be starting to figure out the application of AI technology to all of the other things that we've already discussed today, to some of the new products. The roadmap for FieldView this year is incredible. Hold on, because it's back to what you just said, Mike. If you're not ready to learn and share what you're learning, things will whiz by you faster than I think you're prepared for. So it's going to be a really, really exciting year, where I think we'll look back, if we're sitting here in January 2027, and say, holy cow, yeah. that was a fun year.
Love that. Hold on.
Tagline is buckle up, Tom.
Buckle up.
Well, guys, we appreciate you all joining us. I think this conversation was super insightful. It gets me excited for the rest of 2026. I don't know about yourself, Tom.
I'm pretty pumped. I mean, I have a ton of notes. It's always great to hear from leaders in our organization, especially from you both. It's just something I don't live in or get the experience in unless I'm having the conversation. So really appreciate you two.
But it is truly, it's the foundation for what our farmers and their dealers are going to be experiencing over the next 5-10 years.
No question. And I mean, it sounds like too, it's even that window, 5-10 years, it's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller as we move forward. I mean, it's a pretty crazy, wild ride ahead. Yep. I mean, I don't know how many different ways we can say it.
I don't know.
Well, thank you both.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you.
This is awesome.
This has been Around the Farm, the podcast about all things ag. If you enjoyed the first conversation of 2026, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next time around the farm.